So wonderful.
Thank you.
Look at that. Thank you so much for having us.
Our pleasure.
Oh, sir, here you go. Let's have some prayer.
Amen. If you will bow your heads with me. God, we thank you for tonight and for the impact that America's Future with General Flynn, all the amazing speakers and organizations are having to expose darkness. Speakers and organizations are having to expose darkness and shine the light in America and Wisconsin. Lord, let this event be a catalyst that causes even more of an awakening to happen in this state. God, we thank you that you're raising up an army, a bold army, informed army, active army. This is an army that's covered in the armor of God and the blood of Jesus. I thank you that this weekend we're focusing on child trafficking, and I pray, Lord, that you would release your angels and raise up your church, and that we would see massive exposure of this demonic agenda in the state of Wisconsin. I thank you, Lord, for the verse in Matthew 18 that says the gates of hell won't be able to stand up against your church. The word says the righteous are as bold as lions, and as hell is getting darker, the righteous are getting bolder. Lord, with you, we know we can charge hell with water pistols and not be afraid. We pray, Lord, that your hand would rest upon this event, and we continue to give you all the glory and all the praise. And we all say in Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Pastor. I got in late last night, and we were kind of hungry, so I took a couple of people out. Ivan was with us, and we went into this restaurant, and it was Grizzy's, or oh my goodness, it was delicious. And the young girl that was waiting on us asked us why we were here and what we were doing, so we discussed it with her and everything. And all of a sudden, she turned around to me and she said, "Oasis is the greatest church around here." Yeah, and they gave you that. And she really, and I was like, "Oh, this is unbelievable. This is really beautiful to hear." And I said, "You should come and tell everybody to come." And so it was really nice to hear that, and you have a good reputation. You have a great reputation here. And you ought to be proud of that. So the next thing that we're going to do is I'm going to introduce a man that I've known all my life, an older man, and to me, that's okay. And I have known him all my life, and I've looked up to him all my life, and he's been a protector of mine as a little girl, and growing up in a family of 9. I'm 7, and I'm born between generals. And I want to introduce you to a great man, a warrior for this country, a lover of children, a fighter for children. He will not stop. I'm so happy and proud to have him on my team and beside me fighting this very evil situation going on around the world. And this country is going to have to fix that. We're going to have to fix that as a country, as Americans, because we are the biggest buyers and sellers of children. And it is now going to be introduced to you that it's not just called child trafficking and child exploitation, it's crimes against children. All of it, crimes against children. We're diluting the trafficking thing, okay? We're losing that with people. We have to say crimes against children, okay? That makes a bigger impact. So I want to introduce my brother, General Michael T. Flynn. Thomas. He's Thomas, too. Michael J. Flynn.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you. It's a real honor. And we really try to pack a lot into these summits that we have. First thing I want to do, though, before I have you all stand up and do the Pledge of Allegiance here, is the America's Future team and the people that are here, because I'm never really, I know Mary kind of goes through things with me as to who's going to show up, but would you all please stand up, America's Future team, just so you see how many of us are here, okay? Yeah. And you're going to, thank you guys. Thank you guys. I mean, I always tell people whether it's 3 or 30 or 300 or 3,000 or 30,000, it only takes one to make a difference. Okay, so maybe somebody in here tonight, somebody that shows up here tomorrow, you'll be the one and you'll make the difference. In order for us to be here, we have people that are like the host, not only the pastor and his team and the great, families that I met here tonight, but also just others who have really stepped up to help us be here and to make sure that we, touch you guys in the right way to make you understand. It's not just about this really disgusting issue of child sex trafficking and child slave trafficking. We're the #1 nation on the planet for it, okay? Wisconsin, just coming in here, just studying up on it, Wisconsin's like the #5 in the nation, in the States. It'll just blows you away, the kinds of stats. When you start to really dig into these things, you kind of go, wow. And you wonder why, right? You always have to question why. Why is something happening? Why do we do the things that we do? So I'm going to have you stand up here in 1 second, and before you do, because I want to explain this to you. Pledge of Allegiance, right? It's 31 words. It's something that we should be teaching children from the time that they can talk, right? And comes out of really the Civil War, and it's got an interesting history as to what created it. Bless you. But in 1954, by an act of Congress, they added 2 words: under God. Okay, so under God wasn't always there. Finally, coming out of a World War II, in the midst of still the Korean War, whatever drove that, those members of Congress to say we gotta really put this idea about God into where we're teaching children, because the Pledge of Allegiance would start the day of most schools, of every school in the country. I mean, I went through a little bit of elementary school at a Catholic school, but then we went into the public school system and went all the way through college and through a public university. And my era was to start the school day with the Pledge of Allegiance. And actually, I was in a public school system that we also started with a prayer. So I want you to understand, when you say the Pledge of Allegiance and you teach the Pledge of Allegiance and you cause your children, your grandchildren, or others, you help that out, I want you to reflect on the words, because it is a pledge of allegiance, right? It's a pledge of allegiance. And we have been teaching our children this for a long, long time. Finally added the beautiful words under God, and it's an allegiance to our nation, right? We don't think about it. We just kind of pledge allegiance to the flag, and don't think about it. And then we're done. We move on to whatever the next thing is. As adults, when you teach this to your children, they begin to, and you teach them kind of the way I'm taking 5 minutes to tell you a little bit about these 31 words, and we have to do this, because if we don't, then these children that are growing up in the day and age that we're in, they will lose sight of why this country is so important. And we're about to enter our 250th year here. If we want 250 more years, we better take these words very, very seriously and then teach them. And there's other parts of our curriculums, if you will, the life experience curriculums that we also have to learn and relearn and re-educate all of ourselves on, because if we don't, we're going to continue kind of down this sort of moral decline, this moral tailspin that we are in as a nation. Okay? So if you don't mind, please rise and remove your hat, those great Flynn hats, remove your hats. And then, you can hold your hand over your heart and just say along with me, I pledge allegiance to the flag. Oh my God, right? With liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. Have a seat. So I'm just going to take a few minutes and just chat a little bit. These guys, I mean, we have a world-class group of people that are a part of our organization, and I wish that, and we will continue to plow the hard ground that is in this country, and it is hard. And, nobody wants to, Mary, said Mary was right, about, we use sort of fluffy language at times, child exploitation. This is slavery, and it is physical, mental, emotional abuse. It's incredible. It's right here in your, I don't know, maybe somebody will go through some of the other stats, like where I'm standing, 3 mile circumference around this beautiful church. You got 65 sex predators, child sex predators within 3 miles, So when we start to, it's like, you kind of look at these things and everybody goes, really? Like what? And all these things that we do, what I believe, and I'll speak for myself, that if we don't, and this is where leaders matter, right? And leadership matters. And I mean big leadership, bold, like we were talking, Pastor, earlier, to stand at these pulpits, to stand on these stages and absolutely bring fire and truth to, your congregations, right? Like I said, it only takes one sometimes. People come in, on a Saturday or Sunday, or when little Marcus, where's Marcus at? Marcus is in here because it's forced family fun. Little kid, 7 years old, I said, Marcus told me he's here on Mondays. So because you must have some kids thing going on Mondays or something, but smart little kid, And so, I mean, we have to be so courageous and so bold. And when you are, you're going to be attacked. I am a product of that. I'm an example of that. When you totally believe in what you believe in, you don't have to agree, and you don't have to, side up. You just got to know that when you say something, if you don't believe it, nobody else is going to believe it. Nobody will. And you got to stand there boldly and do it. And it can be really hard on you. And it's really, especially in small communities or communities that are growing, you don't want to mix things up. You don't want to shake things up. You don't want to upset anybody, And we see our country today. I mean, all the stuff that we're seeing coming out of Washington, D.C. with this Department of Government Efficiency. I mean, the level of corruption in our country is staggering. And, what everybody wants is to know that our government is doing everything it can to provide for our safety and our security, because that's all a government is supposed to do. One of the things, and the only person in our country, according to our Constitution, that says a different oath is the President of the United States. So the President of the United States, the only person that uses the word preserve, okay? Because we always say protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. The President, only one, not the Vice President, only the President, says the word preserve, to preserve the Constitution. And that's why the President is given extraordinary authorities to be able to do the things that in this case he needs to be able to do. And so a president can declare national emergencies, and he's actually done that in a couple of cases. We have a national emergency right now because of this problem that we're up here talking to you all about here tonight. This is a national emergency. And if it doesn't get, resolved, if we don't, get control of this problem, and I won't get into the solvable and manageable problems, but this is one that's big. It's really big. And at a certain point in time, and we've been talking about this in our sort of group that we all communicate together on a pretty much a daily, some cases a minute by minute basis, all things going on, that if the number 300,000 is what sticks in my head, and that number variates sometimes, but it's around 300,000. Those were children, and you'll hear from people tonight that have direct responsibility for some of this stuff, and they blew the whistle. I'm looking at Tara as an example. We're talking 300,000 children, for the most part, that came in and were in the custody of the United States government through Child Protective Services, right? Is that fair? There's other parts of our government. So they were the last touch point, and then they essentially are involved in the movement of those children onward into some type of child sex slavery. Okay, so our government. So right now, there's really it's bubbling, it's simmering, and it's about to boil over, because we're moving people out. I know Tom Homan, I know all these people. They're doing their best to get some of these people out. They're starting off with this really hardcore group from Venezuela, but we're looking at, if we say 20 million illegals in our country just in the last 4 years, right? 20 million. Right now, we probably have put out in 3 months and a week, we've probably put out less than 100,000 people. So I'm not a math major, but if you start to look at, a math problem of 20 million, divided by 48 months, right? If you figure 4 years, right? You don't have 4 years, though. That means you got to put out a lot more people on a monthly basis, and we're just not there yet, because it takes time for a new government to get organized, right? Everybody wants everything, and I'm right there. I want accountability. I want to see people, I call for arrests all the time. Somebody posts something and they just, found somebody, and they just found another, whatever it is, hundreds of millions of dollars going into false Social Security accounts, and they know exactly where that's going. Okay, so go get those people, bring them in. I want to see this, because, this is those are crimes being committed against us. The reason why I brought up preserve the Constitution, because the Constitution is a very fragile document, very fragile. Freedom is very fragile. In order to maintain the freedoms that we have, it takes massive sacrifice. Sacrifice by soldiers on the battlefield, sacrifice by pastors who stand up boldly and not just preach the Bible and to show us how smart you are on how much you memorize, but to tie the words from the Bible, which are directly reflected in our Constitution, to tell people and remind people this nation was built on a set of biblical principles, right? And we for the most part, we're talking about what's the faith here, and it's an ecumenical faith. I'm a Catholic. All of the Christian religions, right, or facets of the Christian religion, whether it's Episcopalians, Protestant, Methodist, whatever, Catholic, whatever, we all have the exact same doctrine. We all have the exact same doctrine. It's called the Bible. It's called the Bible. So the doctrine is the same. It's the traditions where we are slightly different, right? I mean, that's it. That's a fact. So when we start to talk about, this business, because we were chatting briefly up here about this, people will come at us, right? The left and this, communism doesn't have. They don't even have an atheistic belief. I mean, they just have that you believe in the government. You believe in who's ever in charge of the government. And that's what we have allowed creep into our country is this sense of socialism, communism, Marxism, whatever you want to call it, whatever ism you want to use. But those are the aspects of what we say to ourselves, how can this be? And if you've been paying attention, you know what I'm talking about. Most people haven't been. So the point that I'm bringing up is that we have got to understand what we're facing. And in order to understand what you're facing, you got to think about it. You got to read about it. You got to listen. And you got to sort of take into account who you are and what do you want. Because as I look around the room, for the most part, people are probably around my age. Maybe there's probably slightly, most of you are, as I look around, most of you are a little bit younger than I am. Some are maybe my age or a little bit older. But, if we don't fix this problem here soon, and I'm talking about with this very historic president, okay? We're in this arc of history right now, and I call it the third arc of history. And if we don't get this one right, we're not going to go, in the direction that we need to go, where we can have another 250 years of beautiful, free country based on our Constitution and based on this being this beautiful republic, right? The American people, when they vote for a president of the United States, and you can see the vitriol and the vindictiveness and the scorn and the evil that attacks this man on a daily basis. Daily basis. And they do it because they're trying to propagandize you all. They're trying to get people to believe in something that they just go, wow, well, maybe there's something to that. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with them trying to control what you think. When the American people go and vote for a president of the United States, and in this case, a mandate and all the other, the numbers of people that came out and voted for Donald Trump, what we are doing when we elect that person, and hopefully our elections get fixed as well, get squared away because they're a mess. But when we elect that person, we are giving our judgment collectively as a nation. Collectively, we are giving our judgment to that one person. And that one person now has the judgment, has the responsibility to take the, what you can call wisdom of the crowd if you want, but to take that judgment, take it into their decision making on a daily basis and do what's best for the nation. And in the case of President Donald J. Trump right now, you'll hear him say this, you'll hear him use these two words all the time, common sense. Just use some common sense in some of the things that we're making, because you look at what's happening to our country, and this particular topic that these guys are going to come up here in a minute and talk about, and then do some more in-depth stuff tomorrow. I mean, we have to fix these issues, and in order to do that, sometimes it only takes one. So my plea to you all is to think about what we teach you here tonight, what you hear tonight, maybe what you hear tomorrow, and think about it for a day or two. Really bring this kind of stuff to your congregation. Share. There was a group of ladies here that are, you guys started a group. Where's that group of ladies that started a group? Where are you at? Yeah. I mean, wonderful. That's what it takes, And you'll hear me say local action has a national impact, right? Because it only takes one. If we don't stitch this country back together by groups like yours, or other groups that you might have, that you allow this, to come into your this beautiful facility and get together and organize. That's why they shut the churches down during COVID. Not because they hate, religion or hated you. They know this is where people organize, and they don't want that. Wow. You know what that was? That was my alarm to shut up. I love that. Damn, it works. Okay, so that's my alarm. So, I am so beyond the nonsense stage of my life. Okay? And there's a great phrase, and I said this to some kids the other day, to some young parents with their kids. And I said, the older I get, the smarter my father becomes. Right? And it's so true. It's so true. And I'm in a point in my life now where it's like, I'm ready to go to the gates of hell. And I'm ready to go into them, and I'm ready to go in, and I will go after them, and I will sink them below the gates of hell if necessary, You know, and I'll finish with this. And I don't know who I said it to, one of the ladies, you know, or somebody up here taking a photo about warriors. Maybe I said it to you, Pastor. God created warriors too. You know, archangels, right? God created warriors to do his purpose on earth, right? And all the other, you know, empires in history, even predating biblical times, you know, here we are still as a nation that's still able to thrive because we have warriors. Warriors don't just wear camouflage, okay? Warriors are people in your congregation. You guys, both you pastors, are warriors for this beautiful faith. You're warriors for your community. But there are other warriors out there. Trust me, heroes on the battlefield are the most unlikely people. You know, you're in military units and you go all these, you know, tough guys. But when it comes to, you know, the sort of the rubber meat in the road, so to speak, heroes come out of nowhere. And you just don't know who that person is. But believe me, when you need them, they're there. And they're there and they're quiet and they just get stuff done. Those are heroes. And we've got to make sure that we recognize them and we nurture them and we protect them and we promote them, right? So I just want to say we are honored, we're blessed to be here. I want to thank you so much for opening up this beautiful church, and please, you know, learn from what we're talking about here. All right, God bless everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, General. Thank you so much. You are an incredible warrior. And we thank you for your service. And we thank you. A lot of veterans here. And this is an amazing church with veterans. Holy cow. And we're going to be honoring them too throughout this weekend. We're going to kick this off now. And I want to recognize Mr. and Mrs. Rand as well. They were two people that I got to know really through their daughter, who, I don't know if do you guys know the Mary Grace show? You guys watched Mary Grace? She's amazing. Woman, Truth, you know, podcast. She actually contacted me and got me involved with the Rand's daughter. Sarah was an intern for us at America's Future, and she was amazing. Young woman who's graduating this year. And I just want to thank them because Wisconsin should have been in 2024, and we just couldn't get here. And it's really because I came back to them, and they made things happen and helped us out. So I want to thank the Rands for doing that for us and bringing that to our attention. And Sarah, where's Sarah? So now I'm going to introduce my great friend, also on the board of directors as America's Future. And I also want to recognize first, before I do that, Ivan Recklin is, did I say your name right? Racklin? Okay, me too. Okay, we're on the same team. I know, me too. Okay, so he's stand up, Ivan. Ivan's great. So Ivan's a warrior, right? Well, Ivan's a real warrior. Ivan is going to be doing a training with you guys tomorrow. That's going to be a real blessing and very, very important on citizenry and our founding documents and so forth. We're adding that in because we need to start going into the churches, especially because as a church, you don't need to be an entity connected to the government. I worked very carefully in the Catholic Church and exposed a lot of that. And I just want you to know that one of the problems that we have in this country is that there are churches that receive government money, and that's a danger. It's a danger to the people. It's a real danger. You're owed. You owe them. So we're having that. And you see Doge. You see what the NGOs, you see what's going on. So we're gonna talk about that with Ivan. We're gonna talk about citizenry and Constitution and so forth. And that's about all I can say about that. You'll have to meet him tomorrow, because he's a good guy. So I want to introduce my friend, Laura Logan. She is a very profound woman of words and truth. She is a world-renowned journalist who has probably served more combat than a lot of people in the military in her lifetime. She served over in combat as a journalist with, I think, both my brothers at some point too, right? Because I'm younger, so I don't remember those things. But anyways, I do know that she's profound. God has been giving her this gift of word, and she just is amazing. I watched this download in her head, and I've watched her do her thing, and it's amazing what she brings out of people and uncovers and so forth. And she's been persecuted herself. Many of these people on this team have been persecuted. So that's what makes this team so special, because they've had their own persecutions, and they've been censored, and their livelihoods have been taken away. So getting back to my friend Laura, she's very, very special to us, and she is going to give you some real incredible information with this team, and I'm going to have her come up right now and introduce her team that's going to come up. And please give her a big hand, Laura Logan.
Love you so much. Good evening, everybody. Mary, thank you so much. I get into big trouble from General Flynn if I talk too much. So I want to, and you have here in this panel tonight an incredible group of people who are on the front lines of this fight for children. I want to reiterate what Mary said up here tonight. We're no longer talking about child trafficking and sexual exploitation and all these other words that typically mean nothing to us. They don't move our hearts, and you know what? They're not actually accurate. What is really accurate is crimes against children, because it is a crime, thanks to Michelle Peterson, one of your own. I'm looking, my old friend there. I'm very happy to be back on stage with her because she's done such extraordinary work. I don't even like the word grooming. How come you got gangs of people raping kids in the UK and they call them grooming gangs? How are those grooming gangs? They're not grooming gangs. And there's the emotional level on which we all respond to crimes against children, but then there's something else more sinister going on, that each one of these people has part of this puzzle. We have an extraordinary panel, so I want to bring them up now. Panel, do you mind coming up and sitting down? If I can bring them up on stage here. Come on, don't be shy. Hello. Okay, so as everybody takes their seat, so what we're going to do with this conversation tonight, for you to understand how everybody kind of connects. Crimes against children encompass many different areas. So we have, you want to sit down? Yeah, I'll sit here. Don't sit in my seat. Where's my dog? Where's my dog? She's over there? Okay. Esther. Esther. Okay. Oh, Esther. I have 6 of, actually I have 5 of those, because where's Melissa? Melissa stole one of them. Okay, so you want to sit down, everybody get comfortable. So crimes against children covers many different aspects. We have Tara Rodas here, who works in the Office of the Inspector General, which is, a very prestigious position. She was seconded to work for, was it HHS, for Office of Refugee Resettlement under Joe Biden, and that's where she blew the whistle. But, and so Tara has a really good perspective on what has happened with unaccompanied minors that have been brought into this country, and also with terrorists. I'm not gonna call them cartels and gang members. Quite frankly, I wanna stab people in the face when they do that, because they're not. They're not. These are foreign paramilitary organizations. These are terrorists who have been infiltrated into this country to tear it to pieces. And they're doing that one family at a time. one street at a time, one house at a time, one community at a time. That's why Wisconsin is number 5. You're in the middle of nowhere. How on earth? How on earth is this such a big problem here? Because it is organized and orchestrated and manipulated and well-funded, and it has a much more sinister purpose. And then, you know, so Tara's going to address that side of it. Lynn's Piper Loomis is just an extraordinary woman. If you haven't read her book, Silent No More, I would encourage you to do that. She has a podcast as well. Lynn's was a victim of satanic ritual abuse. It's amazing that people will still tell you that's conspiracy theory. Isn't that incredible? You have people who have overcome unimaginable terror, and they have lived to tell the tale and fight for other people, and somehow they're dismissed and their voices are lost. Well, not at America's Future, not with Mary and Mike Flynn. Okay, this organization and this family is not going to let those people be forgotten and cast into silence. This woman, you talk about warriors, okay? Oof. You do not know what you're looking at here. Partly because she's got the glasses on. No, I'm just kidding. It's not a very good disguise. Okay, this, when Mike Flynn says to you what one person can do, that's what you're looking at right there. And my friend Lisa here, Brandy, did I get that right? From Shepherd's Watch. Yes, okay. Is on, you know, Brandy and Lisa, in their organization, has been responsible for some of the largest busts of child traffickers in the history of the state of Texas and for the United States itself. And the greatest thing about these women is that they're just like you and me. And some of them, you know, have had rough lives. And they live in these communities, and they, Esther, are you gonna growl at me? Oh, who don't you like? Okay, oh, she doesn't like the camera. So, the thing about them is they're not to be underestimated, and they are underestimated every single day by everyone, and that's what makes them so lethal, because they watch and monitor and know more about child trafficking than 99% of the people out there talking about this subject. So an incredible resource there. Michelle, I think, do you know everybody here? No? Oh, she's from Illinois. Oops, Wisconsin, Illinois. Midwestern belt. What can I tell you? Okay, Michelle has done incredible work with an area that affects every single one of us. Why should we care about crimes against children? It's your children, it's your grandchildren, it's your neighbor's children. Michelle has really been a pioneer in changing the laws on grooming, because there were no laws for grooming in any state, right? Just Illinois. Well, now, when you started? Anyway, her story and what happened to her son is really a tale for each one of us to take home, because if you're there, the most important thing for you to know as a person is you're not powerless. In fact, collectively, somebody said the largest political donor in the United States of America is the American taxpayer. Because when you put all of us together, right, when you put all that together, there is no larger donor. Well, think of that in terms of the power of what you can do, not just with money, but with your voice, right, and with your actions, with when you don't live in fear. General Flynn told me many years ago, you can't live in fear, and that is true. Courage is not the absence of fear, it's acting in the presence of fear. So if you feel fear, don't worry about that. We all get scared. And Jared over here, so Jared has his own nonprofit. Ali, his partner, is over there. And they have an interesting perspective because they're kind of like a generalist. They've been trying to look at all different aspects of this. So some of the time they've spent with traffickers and terrorists. When I say terrorists, no, I mean MS-13 and all these other people that are now legally designated as terrorist organizations. And they've also spent time with people crossing the border and time in the prisons, like in places like Belize and others. And he's got the big brain, you know. So he's able to process and connect a lot of these things. And one of the things we want to address that he's been dealing with, which is something I'm working on too, is organ harvesting, because it's another thing that people say doesn't exist, and it does. It really does. In fact, American kids, there's a very smart man in the audience over there who's probably rescued more kids than anybody in this room for sure, but I don't know anyone who's rescued more kids than him. And he told me just before this that American kids are really sought after for organ harvesting because they have less parasites than other kids. There is a science to all of this. So anyway, without further ado, I would like, where should I start? Who do you want to hear from first? Okay, we'll go with Lynn's. Lynn's, if you could talk to us. Esther, hello, baby. Her brothers and sisters are at my house. Hello, baby. Okay, can you tell people a little bit about your story? What happened to you?
There it is. Sorry about that, guys. So I was essentially trafficked through Child Protective Services, but I was groomed through Illuminati bloodlines, through satanic rituals. My journey started when I was really young. I want to highlight the fact that God can reach really young children. I had an encounter with Jesus at the table at Sunday school, just like you're sitting in front of me. He was in front of me in human form, and he led me through the plan of salvation. And I say plan of salvation because that's a term that most Christians recognize, but it wasn't like, do you repent for your sins? It wasn't like that. It was a genuine conversation. But my mother, it went back multiple years. My mother was ritualized, her brothers, and I was raped and tortured and drugged. But I was sold after my mom and I were in a car accident. We both died. God gave me a choice to come back. She's in heaven. But about a year after that, I was sold from one side of the family to the other, and I was enslaved for 3.5 years, raped, tortured, drugged. I was impregnated with 2 children and drugged with muscle relaxants, so I knew what was happening. My body was paralyzed, and my children were taken from me as satanic sacrifices. I tell you this because the enemy doesn't have that power over me anymore. Greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world. So I just want to focus on the fact that we don't want to glamorize what the devil's doing and talk about how dark things are. It is bad. You guys need to know what's going on. But we are the solutions. It is inherently in our DNA that we are overcomers because Jesus has already overcome the world. And so I will just tell you that the first step to healing was forgiveness. It was never my burden to bear. And letting that go and just letting God have that by faith set me free even more. And it took years, and it doesn't have to take years. I wanted to own the responsibility of my healing, and I believe that there are others in here that can do the same. And I just want to thank America's Future and everyone here. Thank you, General. Thank you, Mary. You're like a mom and you're like a dad. You guys are stuck with me. Boz, thank you. Laura, everyone, just thank you so much.
Tell them what happened when you cried out to God. Remember? When he threw the bag.
Oh, I haven't talked about that too much. Okay, you want me to talk about that? So you're breaking up something I hadn't talked about. So there was a situation, huh?
That's what I do.
I know, you do. There was a situation where there was a man on top of me, and it was my uncle, and he was probably at least 250 pounds, probably more. And there was, I can just tell you, there's 7 spirits of God: the spirit of the Lord, of counsel, wisdom, knowledge, might, understanding, the fear of the Lord. It represents the fullness of the Holy Spirit, and I can give you scripture for that. But the spirit of might actually threw my uncle off of me. He couldn't assault me. I'm gonna get you for that.
Okay, so what's important about Lynn's story is that there is a satanic occult over nature to all of child rape and torture and murder. Everything that everyone here is going to talk about. Lisa can tell you about that. Sorry, Brandy. And Tara as well. These groups that are coming across the border, many of them worship Santa Muerta and the death saints. And there's a lot of ritual to what you're talking about. And the way that you can recognize it so easily is the absence of God. Because you know when you're looking at something that is godless. And when the United States government is complicit in assisting in the crimes against children, that is godless. You know that's a godless entity. So when Kamala Harris stands up at a rally and she's got two young boys that say Christ is King, and she says you're at the wrong rally, she's not misspeaking. That is a godless entity. I don't like to call it Democrat and Republican anymore, because it is literally where you see the presence of God and where you don't. And so, Tara, can you please tell people about your story, how you went down to help on the border in the Biden administration and what you found?
Sure. So at the beginning of 2021, many of you may remember the scenes of children being thrown over the border wall, and the Biden-Harris administration made an urgent call to all federal employees, and they said, if you work for the government, we need you now. We need you to mobilize. We need you to come help. And the specific crisis at the southern border was with children. And so I heard the call and I said, here I am, send me. I thought I was going on like the humanitarian mission of a lifetime. My husband's from El Salvador and I speak Spanish, and I thought I will be the one to greet these children and play games and color, do puzzles. And I'm here to tell you that is not what I found at all. I was mobilized to California. We were in LA County at a place called Pomona, and during less than a 6-month period, we processed over 8,300 children. And these children were telling us the stories of how they were smuggled, how they were lured from their countries, how they were told, you know, you're only making $2.50 a day, but if you come here, I'm gonna pay you $6 an hour. And these children believed that they were gonna be Elon Musk rich. And what they didn't know, and what I didn't know at the time, until the children started to say that they didn't know who they were going to, they started to tell us, you know, I don't know who I'm going to. And that's when we discovered and started looking back through the records and started realizing Congress had been for years saying that they were giving these children to fraudulent sponsors, to people whom they were not related to. And so the Biden administration didn't tell me, oh, by the way, we're not doing any DNA testing. Oh yeah, we're not asking these people to come in and give their fingerprints. What we're gonna have you do is deliver that child in 10 to 14 days. We want you to take that child that's come into your care, and we want you to ship them out to someone you've never seen, to a person we've never done DNA testing on, to a person we haven't fingerprinted in 10 to 14 days. And it was just the horror that the United States government was delivering children to criminals, and then we discover that they're members of transnational criminal organizations, because a brave DHS whistleblower began to see in the beginning of February of 2021 that some of these sponsors were MS-13, some were 18th Street gangs, and they were other transnational criminal organizations. And it was through his disclosure, we started looking through our records again, and we discovered, oh my goodness, this person who's trying to get 2 kids, she's MS-13 affiliated. And if you've been following any of Senator Grassley's work, he's been a true champion for these endangered children. He released the records. He showed, you know, I put out a do not release. And instead of not releasing those children, the government said I was going to be investigated. They actually walked me off the site and took my badge. And after they did that, they sent one of the kids to the MS-13 affiliated sponsor. And so your government, with your money, is giving children to criminals and traffickers and high-level criminal operators. And what's important for you to understand is that these criminals are here in our communities, and they are getting children, and they will come for your children and your grandchildren too. This is what they do. They have criminal networks, and they are abusing these children. And it's very important that we recognize what's happening, and it's why we need to support this administration as they, you know, the first thing they did was close down the border, and guess what? Less kids were being trafficked. The next thing they did is they said, okay, now we need to deport these people who we know our Tren de Aragua and MS-13, and they're starting to do that to make our communities safer. But if they do not continue to do that to make our communities safer and then also rescue the children, we must rescue these children. We know there's at least 320,000 children missing somewhere in America. This is unacceptable. This is unacceptable, and your voice makes a difference. You're here tonight. I don't know how you heard about this event, but you're here for a reason. And it only takes one person to stand up to make a difference. And children today need help, and if we act urgently, we can help them. And so I just want to thank you all for being here. I thank the Flynns. Thank you, Laura, and this panel.
So, as you all know, the administration just announced that the illegal immigration was down 97%. I was just in the Darien Gap in Panama, and I can tell you that that is accurate, especially on that route, where 1.4 million people came through in the last 4 years. It just stopped. If you ever wanted to know what policy changes look like, you're looking at it, right? They changed the policy, and literally the pipeline stopped. But all of the infrastructure is still there. The UN, I counted in Panama City, in the City of Knowledge, an area of the city, I counted 9 buildings alone for the United Nations. You know who's funding that? Who's the main funder to the United Nations? All of you, right? And so, and all that infrastructure is right there. There's a tiny little village. As they come out of the jungle, they come across from Colombia, and they walk through the jungle. And the first town that they come out of, there's all this infrastructure that is still there. It's as if, think about it as if you turned on the tap. Under Biden, they turned on the taps and they never turned them off, right? And they just kept on opening more taps. And now we've turned the taps off. But all the pipes, the taps, the water, it's all there. It's just waiting to be turned back on. And none of them have withdrawn that infrastructure, by the way. The Clinton Foundation is there, Highest, the Jewish agency is there, Catholic Charities, and so on. So all of that is still there. And we now have another problem that I want Tara to speak to, which is that is anybody looking for these kids? Is anybody looking for these missing kids? Tara, can you speak to that?
Well, to start, there has been some effort to try to find. So it's important to give the administration credit where credit is due. And Homeland Security Investigations has done some looking for some of the children. If you've seen any of their reports, they are only, and I know Jared and I were talking about this over dinner, is that they're only able to find about 5% of the ones that they go looking for, and that's because of the flawed way in which they're looking for them. And what they're looking at is the release address, right? So the focus is on look for the child instead of, which is the right thing to do, which is to look at the sponsor, right? Look at the criminal trafficker, target the trafficker, target the person who took custody of the child, and then figure out what's happening. So what's not happening that needs to happen, like yesterday, is targeting of the traffickers themselves, meaning we target the sponsor. That information exists. The Department of Health and Human Services has done everything to include, not comply with subpoenas, to release that information, because they know it's not going to be good what we find there when we start looking at who are the sponsors, because those people we know are MS-13, 18th Street Gang, other transnational criminal organizations, and that's what
now
needs to
terrorist
happen.
organizations, right?
Yes,
under the terrorist designation.
organizations.
And if you're assisting them, that's now material support for terrorists.
Exactly.
So if you're driving people around or moving kids or doing whatever, that's material support. It's a crime.
Yes, because they are harming children. They're committing crimes against children to maintain their networks. That's what they are doing. They are committing crimes against children. And some of the things that they do, I can't even say publicly, some things that people do to infants you would not believe. You just wouldn't believe. This past week, Stephen Miller, she was 14, told the story of how they recovered one of these children who was smuggled across the border by a fraudulent sponsor. She was tortured, she was raped, she was impregnated by this sponsor. This is unacceptable because one, it's unacceptable, period. There's no reason this should have happened, right? Policies caused this, evil caused this, but your tax dollars paid for it. And that's something that we should never get over. We need to hold the government accountable for how they're spending our money. And it's unacceptable that they are paying for the abuse of children with our tax dollars. We must stand up against this evil.
So, the way I would encourage you to look at this, to understand it, for many years you've seen on your TV screens story after story of families desperately trying to make this journey to the United States, dying along the way, suffering, and coming here for a better life. And you got trapped in an argument that if you wanted your border to be secure, somehow you didn't care about those people. I want you to know that as General Flynn has written about, that is information warfare. That is painting you with a false choice. First of all, border security is not defined by illegal immigration. It's defined by things like, let's see, infiltrating foreign terrorists into your country, infiltrating more than 250,000 members of the Chinese People's Liberation Army, uniformed trained members, special operations units, IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guards. The enemies of this country have used that open border, and what they do is they use the people as cover. So the media runs, the cover-up, right, for all these people. They run the emotional operation, which is designed to make you feel like you're a bad person if you don't care. And let me tell you, you can't not care. Jared's going to speak to this in a moment about what you find. It breaks your heart. I talked to people who described seeing people coming out of the jungle in Panama holding dead children. Their children had died on the journey. Could you imagine anything worse in your life? In your life. I found the last 5 people in one of the camps in Panama. One's a pregnant Haitian woman, another's a little 5-year-old Haitian boy. With nothing. Got no one to help them, nowhere to go, nothing to look forward to. I mean, they're abandoned in a way. So this is a brutal emotional story that's very easy to retell over and over and over again. But it is a cover. It is a cover for what is ultimately, I asked the head of the border forces in Panama about this, and he said, yes, this is an invasion. When you're talking about 18 to 20 million people who have no concept of what it means to be American, do not know the words of the Pledge of Allegiance, and will probably never have to learn it if Trump and his administration don't prevail. So this is cover for an invasion force. And Jared has walked on both sides of this, both with the people coming in here and with part of that invasion force. So Jared, can you speak to some of the things that you've encountered and learned from the traffickers themselves and the people that you were showing me pictures of?
Yes. So to build on Tara's point, my research partner and I, Allie Hopper, we spend a lot of time on the border, and we are seeing firsthand these children coming across the border, dirty, scared, exploited, given by the cartel the name and phone number of who they are to request to be their sponsor. To understand our research, I have to share with you how I ended up in prison in Central America 6 years ago. I was leading teams for my church as part of a missions program to this prison to provide the only training that the prison staff and inmates receive. It's been going on 6 years now, and why that's relevant to this discussion is in speaking to many of these inmates who are there for trafficking, we've been able to explain to them and get through to them that while they can't do anything about the victims they exploited in the past, by talking to us, we can protect future victims. And we have talked to some of these traffickers who have laid out in such great detail exactly how this works. Something important that Tara said was the removal of DNA testing to confirm that a migrant child, is related to the person claiming to be their sponsor. And I can tell you from the horse's mouth, these cartel guys have told us that yes, that opened up a child market in the United States like it's never been. What we're talking about, what General Flynn and all of us are talking about, and these crimes against children, this is one of the largest humanitarian issues of our lifetime. Imagine today if a school bus with 28 children didn't arrive to the bus stop. Within minutes, we, parents, would be calling the school, hey, why is the bus not here? Within an hour, it'd be on local news. A couple more hours, national news. 6 hours, international news. 28 children are missing from the United States. Yet, as my partners all just said, we have 480,000 children brought to the United States under the Biden-Harris administration, of which the government has admitted that they've lost track of 324,000. I was speaking with a Homeland Security investigator this week, and he explained to me that overall, nationwide, HSI has checked on the well-being of 100,000 of these children, and they located 5,000. 95,000 were unable to be located. Many of those children, I believe, are being trafficked. Going down to the border, and what happens is when the cartels bring these children, and the cartels kidnap these children, sometimes the parents sell them. When they get to the border, they discard their identifications because that person's identity no longer exists. And the cartel tells them, hey, this is who you were to request to be your sponsor. We've talked to Border Patrol, who has told us that if they say their name is Mickey Mouse, that's what they're getting entered into the database as. Down on the border, there are identifications scattered everywhere. And while we were on the border, walking, we came across this passport. This is a passport of a 5-year-old Colombian girl. Her name's Ashley. We reached out to our partners in Bogota, Colombia, where we spend a lot of time at Interpol working with, and we asked them to check on the background of this little girl. They explained to us that this little girl did not have the required parental consent to leave Colombia. Now, we picked up this passport in Yacumba, which is on the border where there's no border wall, where it is completely cartel controlled. No one gets through this border area without going through the cartel. So we know this child has been in the hands of the cartel. We know the child did not have the required parental consent from the father to leave Colombia, and we know this child's in danger. We worked tirelessly with great organizations. There are organizations out there such as the Association of Recovery of Children and others that do amazing things in rescuing children. And we worked with some of these organizations because though she's now under a false name, we still have her picture. So through facial recognition, I can tell you, it took some time, but we have located this child and she is now safe with her mother in Oklahoma City.
Jared, I'm going to come back to you on the organ harvesting, but what I want you to know is if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh, this is a child from Guatemala, and these are unaccompanied minors, they're coming from all over the world in Latin America, and it's terrible, but what does it really have to do with me? Well, these two ladies, Lisa and Michelle, can tell you exactly what it means to you, in part because the same people are trafficking foreign kids and American kids. They go through the same rat lines, the same movements, the same foreign organizations. They work with foreign governments. You've heard a lot about Tren de Aragua from Venezuela. How was that created? The president of Venezuela sent his people into his prisons to recruit the most violent prisoners that they had. And out of that, they created a foreign paramilitary force in order to invade the United States. That's what it's here for, to disrupt, disturb, and destroy. And they work very closely with Cartel Nueva Generación, CJ&G out of Mexico. Then there's Cartel del Sol out of Venezuela. It's worth $3 trillion in liquid assets. $3 trillion. So when people tell you it's all about the money, I always argue with them because I believe it's all about the children. The most powerful currency in the world is children. It really is. And it's about their organs, it's about perverted sacrifice and ritual abuse, it's about their blood, it's about everything that children represent, and it has been around for a very long time, and I think it's coming to a head, and that's why it matters for every one of you to step up. And I'm gonna go to you first. I want Lisa to talk to you about what they see every day in communities all across America. And I know a lot of the kids that you have rescued lately have been autistic, kids who've been homeschooled, kids who've never been to school, who are not in the community. And the reason I raise this is one of the things that ties their stories together is technology. And every one of you sitting here is carrying that technology. You are assisting in the trafficking. Every one of us, including me, we are all assisting in the crimes against children. And it's time for people to take more responsibility for that. When you hear what Lisa deals with on a daily basis, I think you'll be motivated.
Hi. Can you hear me? Okay, first of all, I would like to say thank you very much for having us here. I think one of the most important things that you can gather from the things I'm telling you is that everyday people are warriors and are heroes. You would be surprised at how much information we get from the public that has to do with online solicitation, grooming, suspected trafficking, illicit massage businesses, things that are going on in hotels or in homes, RV parks. And when we gather this intel, we're able to basically throw the net down and take this information out and figure out who's who. Now, when she talks about the autistic kids that have been rescued, the saddest part about that on the domestic side is that these were kids that nobody in a million years would have thought that these are going to be victims. Their parents didn't. They're sitting on laptops in the living room with their parents, and the monster's in the living room. Because that monster knows that that child that they are basically grooming through gaming Discord is going to be theirs in a matter of weeks, because they're waiting for them to turn 17 or for them to get far enough away from their parents that they're taking them across state line. We had 2 autistic kids within, I think it was 6 weeks, that went out of state. We got both of them back.
But it wasn't easy.
It was not easy. It was not easy. There was a lot of hurdles. And when we talk about how do we go about attacking this trafficking problem, I think it's multi-pronged. It can't just be a one approach where we just put it all off on law enforcement. We have to look at our approaches for legislation. That has to change. We have to look at our economic development boards, our real estate developers, our property management, our fire marshals, our game wardens, and the church. And we have a trafficking problem, but we also have a heart problem. Because when you look at these rings right now and the things that are going on, whether it's an illicit massage business or a migrant trafficking ring happening in Dallas that's churning out $25 million a year, we had 25 girls in that ring. And they were from Honduras, El Salvador, Panama, Costa Rica, Venezuela, and Mexico. Each girl was making about $1 million. She's not keeping that, it's going back to the cartels, but that's a lot of money. That's a whole lot of money. That's one ring.
And how many men is that in a day?
Well, you're looking at $120 for every 15 minutes, so you can do the math. So the supply and demand is there. And we have a heart problem. And we have to start looking at multi-pronged approach to attack this and looking at the different levels that everybody in this room can make a difference at. And I think that working together, we're going to start moving this needle. But right now, I will tell you, even though that border's closed, we have a lot of people here that is feeding that supply and demand. Our ads right now for Dallas, Texas alone per day are 1,700. That's just Dallas.
Explain what you mean by ads.
These are sex ads. These are selling people online. And it is men, women, children, gay, straight, bi, trans, whatever, the whole plethora. It is sex ads out of illicit massage businesses where these girls are doing things that they're allowing things to be done to them that are absolutely horrific. It is...
Is that because of drugs?
Well, it depends. You know, when we look at the domestic side, a lot of that does have a lot of drug involvement. When we look at the migrant side, most of those girls are paying their penance back to the cartel. So they're going to churn and burn, for 6 months and try to get out of that ring. But, you can look at illicit massage businesses where you go in for a massage and you think, oh, well, this place is a little strange. What you don't know is there's 5 girls held in the back there that are held hostage. And they are allowing these men to do anything to them. And when we look at those particular sex trafficking rings, the patrons or the customers, more often than not, are sex addicts. So it's, we have a heart problem here, and we got to start looking at how we get everybody involved, whether that's law enforcement, everyday citizens, the church, legislation. We all have to work together to start conquering this, or we're going to lose this battle.
What is the Rainbow Railroad? Can you tell them about that?
Well, the Rainbow Railroad is an underground railroad where they groom children that they convince are trans, and they pull them into this ring railroad, and they look to get gender modification for them.
So they do surgeries underground.
Yes.
And who's the number one buyer for these kind of kids?
These kids go for 3 times the average price of a
They're
male or
boys,
female.
typically.
Typically boys that are pre-op for trans, and the number one customer is couples.
Married couples.
Yes. Yes. We have a heart problem, guys. We got to solve this.
Can you explain that? What is it? I mean, how do you even make sense of that? What does that mean?
I wish I could. When we see the ads and we start calculating, we have technology that basically gathers this data through toolkits. And when we look at these ads and we look at what they're advertising, how much they're advertising, when you're looking at $120 for 15 minutes and what they call a Latin quick visit to maybe $160 for 30 minutes, and that's a minor, to, okay, well now this is a trans kid and this person's going to be $500 for 30 minutes, $2,000 for an overnight.
I got to tell you, I mean, Lisa sent me a bunch of ads. It's unbelievable. You can't tell that these are boys.
No.
And there's entire genres that glamorize and glorify this. If you talk to your kids, there's femboys and this boys and that boys, and they make millions of dollars on Instagram and YouTube out of these identities.
Yes.
And the same thing extends to furries. You all know what furries are? Yeah, they're not like people who just like to dress up in animal suits. That's nonsense, right?
No. There's a lot of perversion and pedophilia in the furry movement.
In the furry community.
Mm-hmm.
So once when you and I were talking, you described you were in the middle of trying to find 2 young girls who had appeared in an ad, and you were pretty frantic because you said that you didn't have a lot of time. Can you explain that?
Well, everybody that's up on this panel has that one story, and it's the story that changes your life. For me, it was looking at Facebook, of all things, and there was a garage sale site, and there was a create a story, that my story button at the top, and I saw 2 girls that were for sale in a very small town, and they were for sale in a hotel up the road. They didn't say what hotel, there's 5 up there, so they were in one of those 5. And one of the girls was definitely a minor. We've gotten good enough at this that we can tell. And then the other one, she was clean, older, beautiful, made up, and she was the recruiter. And the indicator for us that the minor child was in definite trouble, she had on dirty shoes. And so the panic button hit inside me, and I tried to get help from law enforcement that was overrun. That weekend they had a major flea market, and they didn't have enough bodies, enough time to get to the matter at hand, and we knew that we only had about 72 hours before they moved them. More than likely, she didn't make it, according to a criminal investigative division. We work very closely with law enforcement. And
What was it about the dirty shoes that told you that she didn't have a lot of time?
well, because 17-year-old pimps will give them $5 flip-flops. They clean them up, and when you see a dirty kid in an ad, they don't have a great future.
So they dress up the ones they're going to keep.
Correct.
Because they're going to be sold over and over.
Right.
So when you see one that's like that with dirty shoes, you know they're going to kill her.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. They don't have long.
So one of the things that is quite astonishing is how prevalent this is now. Someone just put out a statistic for how many teachers have been arrested for pedophilia and sexual crimes against children in the last, I think from last year, and it was over 1,100, if I'm remembering that correctly. And I don't know about you, but I follow libs of TikTok, and it's like every time I turn around, there's another teacher pedophile, and I'm like, what the hell's going on here? what the hell is going on here? I mean,
Heart problem.
that's why I say, Callie calls it a heart problem, I call it a godless problem,
Yeah.
right? And someone, I mean, Michelle had firsthand personal experience of that. Will you tell everyone what happened to your son?
Sure. So I'm from Morris, Illinois, which is about 80 miles southwest of Chicago. And back in 2010, my 15-year-old son was having a grooming incident on the baseball team, reached out to him, the coach, a male coach, and looking for advice. And he then proceeded to groom him. And for those of you who don't know what grooming is where somebody tries to gain the trust of another person, and it's usually somebody older going after somebody younger, and the end goal of that is to have sex with that child. But I want you guys to understand, they don't just groom that child. They groom the community, they groom the family, they try to gain your trust. So to give you a little more background, I'm a physical therapist. I was in this guy's house treating one of his family members when he started texting my son. I was also coaching softball at the same high school where he was coaching baseball. So he knew me as a colleague, a parent, and a healthcare provider. And my son is a very kind-hearted person, would do anything for anybody. And I always tease that he had the right kid, he had the wrong family. Because my son, I had been a single mom for a long time, I thought that he would tell me anything. We talked about everything. He went everywhere with me for years. And my son was so embarrassed by all of this. And I want you guys to know that 1 in 6 women, 1 in 4 boys will be abused by the time they're 18. And the ones who don't come forward typically are the boys. And my son, at this point, he is 30 years old now. He just told me a few months ago he would have never told me had I not overheard a conversation. And so this started in May of 2010. In October of 2010, I was coming back from a funeral and I overheard a conversation, and he was sounding very annoyed, very upset. He said, I don't know how often you want me to call you. You know, I'm working 2 jobs. I'm taking a class in college. And he was a junior in high school at the time. And then I hear him say, I'll meet you in your classroom tomorrow to pick up those paintballs. So my heart just sunk. It's about 11 o'clock at night on a Sunday in October, and this is a baseball coach. I knock on the door. I said, hey, who you talking to? And he told me. I said, you need to hang up the phone. I said, it's completely inappropriate that he's calling you at this time of night. I went straight down to the computer, looked up the phone number he was talking to, and found thousands of messages between May and October. And I was one of those moms, I checked my son's phone all the time. I would look at his text messages, his emails, what he was doing, if he was cussing in his text messages, because other parents might be looking at those messages. What are they going to think of him, right? And I never saw one of over 6,000 messages because he knew I was doing that, and when they came through, he would delete them. So I printed off some messages, took it to the teacher the next day, or the principal the next day, and I said, I think we have a problem. Now, this principal, again, knew me as a parent and a coach. And he met with the 2 of them, and he said, you know, they're both denying any wrongdoing. I can't really do anything at this point. But he encouraged me, and he said, you're Andrew's mom. You can do whatever you want. He said, if you want to contact DCFS, you have every right to do that. He told me 4 times in 4 different ways to contact DCFS that day because his hands were tied and he couldn't. So I contacted DCFS. It took them over a week to get back to me. When I called the local office, they of course said that the person who had the case file was on vacation, and they're supposed to be out within 24 hours. I then, being me, called the director of Illinois for DCFS, and I could hear her typing, and she said they should have been out there last week. I said, I get that. And so she said, they'll be out there today. If they're not out there today, I want you to call me back. And they were going to come the next day to free somebody up. And what ended up happening is they ended up coming out that day. My son was so mad at me. He just wanted this to go away. He thought that now that the teacher had been caught, it would just stop. But I had to have a conversation with him that it was no longer about us. It was about the next kid. And I sent him to bed one night, and I said, you know, there's 3 boys that live across the street and 4 that live down the street. Something happens to one of them. How do you face their parents knowing you could have done something about it and you chose not to? I said, God put this in our laps for a reason. He knew he'd take care of it. So I didn't think it would take 3 years to get that done. My biggest fight at the time was with the state's attorney's office in my local county. They essentially wanted me to just go away, and I kept coming back. And I had to find somebody who could get those messages off the phone. So I found somebody who could get the messages off the phone, and he was being hung up by an update that was done by Apple. And they don't have to help these local jurisdictions do anything. And so that's gonna be my next law I'm working on, so. So they didn't have to help, and they ended up taking it down to the Illinois State Police, and they had his phone for probably 6 to 7 months total. So we're almost a year after all of this, and nothing has happened to this guy. He's on paid administrative leave because in those text messages that my son admitted to, finally, when I told him I could find somebody to get these messages off the phone, he had offered my son $500 and then $1,000 and $1,500 for lewd and lascivious acts to be performed on him. Wanted to make a sex video with him. Would refer to his body part as my little guy. And at that point, they put him on paid administrative leave because of the union, so they had to pay him. So they weren't getting these messages back to us. They kept kind of pushing me away, and I actually got the Secret Service involved through a friend of mine, and her husband was a Secret Service agent. They hooked me up with one who was on a pedophile task force, and he said, I'm gonna give you 2 business cards, and you keep one, and you take one down to that state's attorney's office, and you tell them if they don't have the messages off that phone in the next 7 days, you're gonna turn it over to the feds. He goes, I'll have them off there in 15 minutes. Yep. So I did that, and we had the messages back in 3 days. So, and everything was in these messages. There were gaps in the transcripts for sure, but what I want you guys to understand is from all of this is that you should never give up on your kids. You need to keep fighting for them no matter what happens. When every door gets shut, you open up another one, and you find a way to get in there. There was one point I was nose to nose with our state's attorney's office and pretty much told him I was stuck with him as my attorney. He better start doing his job. And it was not pretty, it was ugly. Our house was tumultuous. I want you guys to realize that this is not easy to go through. And man, I can usually get through this. So, imagine if he would have touched my child. I can tell you for sure I probably wouldn't be sitting here, because I'd probably be in prison. But when these groomers are good, they will do everything they can to take your kid down. And when I found out from a trafficking investigator that they used our case because we ended up with the very first grooming conviction in the United States after a 3-year battle. And by the grace of God, this guy was going to take a plea deal. We went to court in August of 2013, and he decided he wanted to take it to trial. Now, that never happens but God. And our state's attorney, who was a different state's attorney now, we had brought in a new state's attorney in January of 2013. He and his first assist met with me and my husband, my son. My son now, at this point, would have been 19. And he said, you know, there's a new law that came into play in Illinois just last month, and it's a grooming law, and everything that they did to you and your family in this community is in that law. And he said, we're gonna go after it, but it's gonna be difficult to get. And so my son was on the stand for 4 hours, and ended up, like I said, getting the very first grooming conviction, solicitation of a minor. But what I want you guys to know is I felt like I was up against the old boys club, right? Like they just wanted me to go away. I felt like I was the enemy. I was the person who made the problem. But also know that there are things in place right now that you could do to protect your children, your grandchildren. There's an app that you can get. It's called the Bark app, B-A-R-K. You can also get a phone, Bark phone. And this app, you can actually set it up so that you can get all of your kids' text messages going in and out of their phone onto your phone. You can also get the actual phone, and the phone itself has a GPS on there that cannot be turned off. So it's amazing capabilities, which I wish I would have had. And here's the other thing is take your kids' phones at night, because if I would have had his phone, I would have seen all these messages coming in after 9 o'clock at night. There would be 20, 30 messages coming in. My son wouldn't respond, and then he felt like he had to because this guy was in a position of authority. And then to let you know, because of the way that the laws are written, this guy did 30 days in jail. 30 days. Had to register as a sex offender, but for only 10 years. So as of last May, he's no longer on the sex offender registry. He can never, ever teach again, so that's a blessing. And he paid like a $2,700 fine. And when I met a trafficking investigator in January of 2023, she told me that they used our case for every trafficking case they bust because they have to prove the grooming in order to prove the trafficking. And she had no idea who I was at the time, and she was telling me about a couple cases she had worked on. And this was at a Reawaken event. And prior to this, I had met General Flynn before. He had been to my church for another event. And when I told him the story, he said, "You have to meet my sister Mary." And so I tell Mary the story. And Mary's like, "I need your case because we have a case in Tennessee." And so I give her the case, and so they worked the case. But then she also introduced me to Allie Hopper. So Allie is a paralegal out of Florida, and we were going to put a law in place to amend the current grooming law so that somebody charged with grooming and or trafficking could not take a plea deal. Because we thought that's why I had the only grooming conviction in 10 years. So she goes to work, starts looking at the criminal code in Florida, and realizes very quickly there's no grooming law in Florida. We found out very quickly there wasn't a grooming law in any other state other than Illinois. So now I made it my personal mission to get a grooming law put in place in all 50 states.
Michelle, can you tell them what just happened in Montana?
Yes, and so I have a cousin who has been watching my podcasts and so forth and learning, and she has a 13-year-old daughter, so she bought her a Bark phone, and she started getting alerted on her phone that her daughter was getting messages on Snapchat. And so she looked at her phone, and she called me and told me what was on there, and I said, "You need to take it to your local police department." And she was basically told she just needed to be a better parent. I said, "Take it to your local sheriff." Same thing happened there. I said, "Take it to your local FBI." This was all in a matter of about 12 hours, and so she takes it to the FBI. This guy had been trained by ICAC, Internet Crimes Against Children. He takes the phone, he looks at it, and he said, sure enough, it was two guys in a different state. And it was an older man and his son at they didn't even tell us what state they were in at this point. And I said, "You need to go get your Chromebook from the school," because they just finished school. I said, "Go get it before they wipe it." And so they got it, and sure enough, he was also trying to message her on the Chromebook. And so I told my cousin, I said, "You need to get a rep or a senator in Montana to sponsor this bill, because if you don't know somebody personally that you can actually connect to, your emails go off into the ether, and nobody wants to call you back." So it turns out that her boyfriend, his cousin, is a Democrat rep in Montana who had just had a baby. I said, "You need to go and pull on her heartstrings and tell her what just happened to you. Send her to my website, show her all the stuff we're working on." And so she said she'd sponsor the bill. And for whatever reason, this has become a partisan issue, and it should not be. This is a nonpartisan issue, that we all have children, so we need to be able to have these guys work across the aisle on these things. But she wasn't in the correct committee to be able to carry this bill, so she actually took it to a representative on the other side of the aisle and gave it to a Representative Love, nice name, right? Representative Love out of Montana, and she sponsored this bill. And now Montana, as of last week, has a grooming law. And let me tell you what is actually in this law. So part of it, this is just part of it. If the groomer is 18 years of age or older and the person that they are grooming is 12 years of age or younger, it is 100 years in prison. No chance of parole for the first 25 years. And if they get out at 25 years, it's a lifelong satellite surveillance. So, this is what General Flynn talks about. This is just one person, right? And my cousin is just one person. And that legislation should be model legislation across the country. Now you go to Indiana, where I'm actually from, and I've been working with a senator there, and they put it through in a state that has a supermajority with the Republican Party, and they put it in as a misdemeanor. I just can't make it make sense. But so that's what what we're fighting up against. And I'm trying to get this, if we can get anybody out there who has a rep or a senator in any state that you know personally, that you can text, that you can have a conversation with, and if you can get them connected with me, we will help them. Allie's helped me with certain bills still and helping with writing these. And then Amy Coelho, who is the trafficking investigator, who is also a paralegal, she's helped as well. But we need help out here, and we need you to come forward. And the America Project gifted me a website, thankfully, so I have a landing page for my stuff. And if you go on to michellepeterson.org, at the top, there are tabs up there. There's a contact me, and you can reach out to me and email me, and I will get back to you, I promise, so that we can get these laws put in place in all 50 states.
Thank you, Michelle. Jared, can you speak to some of what you've learned being on the border, being in these countries? What have you learned from the people who are actually on the ground doing, carrying out these crimes against children, moving them across borders, exploiting them?
It's a great question, thank you. So, working down on the border, what we've seen is horrifying. I could share with you that we were on the border in a location called Yucamba, California, and we were speaking to a property manager, and he explained that on his property, there's no border wall, and it's a constant flow at that time of migrants by the cartel. And he explained there's two different paths on his property. One path is where people that are coming from countries of wealth go through, China, Russia, others. There's no signs of exploitation on that path. But he said, then there's this other path. This other path he described as the poor people path. Those are the people spending $4,000 or $6,000 versus $30,000 to get here. And he explained that he hears the screams of women and children being sexually assaulted on that path frequently. In fact, he feels very alone out there because he said Border Patrol doesn't patrol his property. Local law enforcement in California doesn't respond to these incidents involving migrants. And he described a time where a woman was covered in blood running to him, begging for help, but he was helpless because the cartel member was directly behind her and threatened to kill him if he got involved. He explained that 2 days before our arrival that he very distinctly heard the screams of somebody screaming for help that was being sexually assaulted. And I said, well, you need to take us there. And I tell you, we walked this path of exploitation. And I'll skip over the gory details, but I can tell you it was very clear to us the level of exploitation at the hands of these cartel members in this area.
Don't skip the details. What do you mean?
I mean torn clothing, bloodied clothing, children's clothing that show the signs of sexual assault by the sides of the underwear being ripped. This is what these cartel members are doing to these children. And I'd really like to build on something else that Tara said. Whenever they did away with the DNA testing and this huge market of migrants, of child trafficking flourished, I was in a shelter in McAllen, Texas, and there was about 200 migrants, of which about 150 were adults. And it was part of a tour that I was on, and the migrants were in like a plexiglass cage is really what it was, and we were being given the tour on the outside. And I asked the person providing us the tour, I said, can I go in there and speak to them? She looked at me like I was crazy. She said, you want to go speak to them? And I said, yeah. I tell you that every single migrant that we spoke to in there had been exploited by the cartel. I spoke to an individual named Alan from Peru. Him and his family were kidnapped, taken to where they could have money sent to him via Western Union, therefore they were allowed to live. Where Lara had mentioned the Darien Gap, it's the only land bridge between South America and Central America. I talked to an individual that went through there and saw 2 people sexually assaulted and murdered because they had no money for bribes. But the saddest story was this mother. This mother refused to let her child out of her arms for hours. Her child was getting heavy, but she refused to set this child down. And when the staff said, well, why don't you let your child down? You're safe here. She explained that the cartel stole not only all of her belongings, but the other 2 children she started the voyage with because she has no money for bribes. Later that week, I attended my first America's Future Summit at Fort Worth, Texas. And I thought to myself, as I was flying from the border up there, why would the cartel want children? And then I met Tara Rodas, and it made sense. From there, I went back down to the prison, and I talked to these guys that are incarcerated for trafficking and for these other offenses. And they explained that as soon as the United States did away with DNA testing, they could take any child and bring them through the border and sell them for sex, sell them for illegal adoption. We spoke to a Border Patrol agent on an America's Future tour. He was a participant. With tears in his eyes, he explained to us that he had a recent case. He came across 2 adults with a child. The adults were claiming that they were the parent. The child complained of stomach pain, so it's Border Patrol policy to take that child to the hospital. At the hospital, the doctor informed the Border Patrol agent that that child, in fact, had been raped. And the reason he was so upset was because under the failed, evil, corrupt policies of the past administration, he had no other choice but to hand this child that had been raped back into the hands of those who exploited her. That is what this evil is doing. And it is case after case after case that we hear about. These cartels, they don't view people as human. They view them as property. They are exploiting people at such a level that people, the victims, once they get in the United States, they're afraid to even speak up because they're afraid that the cartel is going to come find them in the interior of the United States.
Because they will. Because they're all across this country.
Absolutely.
So, and one of the things I want to point out is when you hear these terrible emotional stories, these are the same emotional stories that you hear about, you know, people being deported, right? I don't know if you've seen some of the videos online. Somebody's weeping, don't take my husband, don't take my father, my mother. This is because you're supposed to concentrate on that part of the story. And you're not supposed to concentrate. You're never directed towards the people who are carrying this out. And it's in part because 20 million people have been brought into this country in the last 4 years illegally. Jared even referring to them as immigrants. They're not immigrants, they're illegal immigrants. And when did that language change? When Joe Biden took office, he banned the word illegal. He took it out of the lexicon, and it hasn't been put back in. So people become conditioned and they self-censor, and now we all go along with it. Where does that come from? It comes from the United Nations, who in 2018 passed the Global Compact for Migration, where they made migration a human right. So they took what? They took human rights, they made those above the sovereign rights given to us by God, and they said you can no longer stop this from happening. So when I research this and work, and I look at all the reports about rape and deaths and all of that to try to understand what's been happening to these people, what I find from all of the organizations that document this is they all reach the same conclusion. And it is not that you change the policy or that you change something in the Darien Gap or one of the other routes so that people don't die. Because their answer is if you do that, they'll find another way. Their answer is, you have to open the border. And that's how you know this is part of a political organization right now. That's what you're looking at. Every single thing that everybody here is dealing with, and you know this. You know this is spiritual. That's why you're here. That's why we're in this church. Because that pain that Jared witnesses, those people carrying it out, there's a lot of evil people that are willing to do evil things. But who opened the border for them? And that's what Tara deals with. Who opened the border for them? And who are their little loyal servants all along the way that just go along with it? And who's gonna stop it? Because behind that is the occult and the satanic and the ritualistic part of this is a spiritual battle. And Lindsay is the living definition of that, of what that means. And what Lisa is dealing with every day in the communities is that all of this happens on an exponential level because of technology and because people don't want to pay attention, right?
Absolutely. Supply and demand.
So can you speak to who, you talk, Michelle, about groomers. We got to come up with a better word for them than groomers, because these people, I mean, they're pure, they're evil.
They are.
And they come in all shapes and sizes. Can you speak to that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the groomers, it's not typically what you think. I mean, when you talk about the school teachers, when you talk about the predators that are getting kids off of gaming Discord, when you talk about the people that are in your living room talking to your children, when you talk about the people that are in your community and they're grooming children, I don't think groomer is an appropriate word, do you? I think predator, I think sick, evil, pedophile, you know, name it. But I don't think groomer is a bad enough word, because the damage that they do is so far beyond anything you can imagine. Because, you know, they might get a little bit of time in prison, but it's not the prison that they set up for that child. You know, and when you look at the laws that we have even on the books right now, we need to go back and review those and make sure that we have enforcement action on that. Because, you know, when you've got people that are supposed to be registering as child sex offenders for the rest of their life, and there's not an enforcement action on that penal code. So the DAs are walking down the parole, they're walking down the probation, they're walking down the sentencing, and they're not sticking that charge on them, they're removing it. These guys are going back out and they're doing it again. So we had a child trafficker who did 5 years for trafficking a 14-year-old. He did 5 years, he did 1 year parole. Did not have to register as an offender. Guess what he's doing now? Well, he got caught, but he was trafficking 13 and 14-year-olds again. As soon as parole was over, he's back at it again. And when law enforcement is so angry that they're like, wait a minute, I thought this was part of the penal code, is because we didn't have the enforcement action in the code. And so we have to change the legislation to make that work. But groomers are everywhere.
There are also other kids,
Okay.
right? Can you speak to that?
Speak to,
That fact that kids are grooming other kids.
that's the hardest part is, you know, when you get the phone call that you have children that are 9 that are being groomed by 15-year-olds. And, you know, you're kind of scratching your head going, gosh, you know, what do we do with this? You know, and the sex innuendos and the acts that they're asking them to do are so graphic and horrific. Like, where did you learn that? Where did you get that information, and who taught that to you? That's not normal 15-year-old language. So you have abusers abusing again. It's a vicious cycle.
Where do they get that language from?
Well, the language comes from online technology, and like I said, you know, they have accessibility to it on their phones, on their tablets. You know, everybody has a premonition that the sex ads and the sex stuff is all on the dark web. It's not. It's on your phone. And I tell people this all the time. I'm like, give me your phone. Give me your child's phone. Let me find it for you. You'd be surprised what 13-year-olds are doing on cell phones, really. I mean, it would shock you, even the acronyms that they use. So they're being exposed to this. We have a heart problem. We need to bring the church back in to everybody's life. We need to be talking about this. We need to be involving everyday people, legislation, your community leaders, and we need to be looking at what's happening with our kids. It's okay to install Bark, right? It's okay to take that phone and observe to see what's going on. And you'd be surprised at the conversations that are going back and forth between kids themselves. It's shocking. And we have to change this, guys. I mean, you know, this can't be a turnstile industry. We have the power to do this. We can change this together.
I mean, anyone here go to Walmart? Okay, so my town of 11,000 people, I go to Walmart a couple of years back, and it's Christmas time, and my son goes to get some Christmas decorations, and he thinks it's funny because he's a 15-year-old boy, and he comes back with a cart full of sex toys. Because it's a joke, right? Because he's going to decorate the tree with sex toys. Why are they selling sex toys in Walmart and not one of us says a word about it? That's the first part of grooming. That's the first part of preparing your children for things that, quite frankly, they know about things I don't know about and don't have no desire to know about. And they all know about it. Where else is it? It's in their books. It's in the books that they're learning at school. I just reposted something online. Obviously, an African-American guy confronting a teacher at school because she's part of sex education class with this woman is about butt plugs. And she says, well, you're against homosexual people because you're making a point out of this, you're homophobic. He says, lady, no one should be teaching children about any kind of sex toy. It's got nothing to do with gay sex or heterosexuals or anything like that. So why? You don't have to go marching down to the border or join, the Inspector General's office to do something about this. You don't even have to have a kid in school. There's organizations, Moms for America, Moms for Liberty. I prefer Moms for Liberty just because they do more in my town. But there's organizations that exist out there. There's plenty of opportunities for you to get involved. And one of the things, I know you wanted to talk, when we talked about the Underground Railroad, the Rainbow Railroad, this causes permanent, irreversible damage to children. What happens to them in this Underground Railroad? But it's not new, right?
No, and I'll just say Bohemian Grove, the Lolita Express, there were children.
Can you explain what those things are in case people don't know?
So Lolita Express is it's a airplane. Epstein had something, I think, similar to that, but it's also a bus system. There's a former Satanist, now radically saved Christian, Zachary King, who actually talked about children that were given chemical castration drugs before they hit puberty, so that would sterilize them to suit the fancies of whoever attended Bohemian Grove. And I'll also just say on this issue of grooming, I have a case I've been helping with and exposing. Guys, you can sit from your phone and expose these corrupt politicians. It doesn't take very much to start annihilating them, metaphorically speaking, and turning over that cart. It's on both sides of the aisle, just as much on one side as it is the other. I have a 12-year-old female that was abducted, unlawfully groomed through Snapchat by a 16-year-old male. He'd had a history of doing it before, took her to Jacksonville, drugged her and raped her before, drugged her and raped her in Jacksonville. And the AG of South Carolina, Alan Wilson, who wants to run for governor, we're gonna shut down that campaign. He said he's glad that the human trafficking has increased over 450% in our state. He's proud of that. He said, we're doing something right because we're able to track the numbers. This is the guy that says that the protocol is that when a child is hurt, that case goes straight to his AG's office. He has, to this day, to this very moment, never responded to those parents. So if you think that the government's gonna solve your problem on what's happening in these cases, you're hearing from a mom. My daughter was almost given a chemical castration drug when she was little. I found out about it and I stopped it. You guys, you are the solution. If you're angry about this, get out and do something. Don't sit on your duff and just wait for someone else.
Obviously, nobody wants their taxpayers funding any of this. It doesn't even make sense. Tara, can you speak to what you would like to see happen now to find these children that are missing and presumably to get them home, right? Because Sarah Carter, a great journalist, reported on how she interviewed the president of Guatemala, and he said, we want our kids back. And there's a staggering number of these unaccompanied minors come from Guatemala. And Jared, you found the evidence of it. You found that passport and traced that child, and that's what the government told you. So many of these kids have been sold in Chihuahua, Mexico, and impoverished areas like that. It happens all the time, but many of them have been stolen.
Yes, and so what needs to happen and what we've been saying is, number one, we need to rescue the children, right? And we're gonna do that by targeting the traffickers. That means looking at who are these sponsors, who has the children, which will lead to the dismantling of the trafficking networks. So we want to rescue children, we want to target the sponsors, right? And then we want to dismantle the trafficking infrastructure. And that is going to also make all the communities safer, because the goal, right, we know that Homeland Security investigations, when they go after just the address, they're only getting a 5% hit. That we will not solve the problem that way. That is not the way to solve the problem. We have to go after the perpetrator, after the people who are raping the children, after the people who are selling the children. We go after them, we will then find the children that they have, and we will be able to dismantle the trafficking infrastructure. And remember, these people, if they're trafficking children here, right? They're trafficking them in your community. That means your children are also at risk. Your grandchildren are at risk. This can be done. This is not a hard thing to do. It's very interesting what Michelle said. She told the state, right? The advice was, if you don't get this to me in the next week, I'm going to give it to the feds and they're going to get it in 15 minutes. I'm here to tell you today that if the HHS database was turned over and DHS was able to look at the HHS sponsors, we were able
And that's
to do
Health
the-
and Human Services and Department of Homeland Security.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I throw around a lot of acronyms. If we were able to do the data matching, we would be able to reveal in 2 weeks. We'd have a list of MS-13, we'd have a list of Tren de Aragua, we'd have a list of 18th Street Gang, a lot of the Mexican cartels, and I wonder who else might be on that list. Who else might be on the
Politicians.
sponsor list? Understand it's been more than a decade that they've been hiding the information. Who knows who might be on the list? But what I know is that in 15 minutes, with access to the data and the data matching tools that we have, we can find out who they are. So again, your voice makes a difference. A new administration they're on the right track, and guess what? They can't do it by themselves. Nobody can do it by themselves. One person can't change the whole course of the federal government. But together, our voices, local action, national impact, you all can get involved, and your voice does make a difference. We have to stop these predators. Absolutely.
You want to say something? How are we doing on time? What does that mean?
This is very hard for all of them to talk about in their own situations. But let me just give you a little statistic, a few numbers, Laura. I don't mean to interrupt, but I want to do that. So we have this organization called Shared Hope. Has anybody heard of them? Ooh, wow. How about that? One person just raised their hand. They have been doing deep dives on states and giving them report cards. And I just want to give you an idea. 32 states out of the country have what you call an F, a report card, as a report card. And Wisconsin is an F. And the categories are this: criminal provisions, F. Identifying and response to the victims, F. Continuum of care, a big F. So there's no care for these victims. They get a C in access to justice for trafficking survivors. Okay? Tools for victim-centered criminal justice response. Okay, tools for victim-centered criminal justice response. I'm going to explain that in a little bit. That's an F. Prevention and training. And that's why we're here with you guys. We're here to help you with prevention and training. Okay? You're going to get a deep dive from each one of these people tomorrow on how you can do this and how to identify and solve situations. And because the other statistic I want to tell you, 179 unaccompanied children, UACs, are right here in this county. 352 sex offenders are in Eau Claire. 65 sex offenders are 3 miles in this radius of this church. And I want to say something because I worked in the church. One of the things that a pastor can do is demand a report on who the sex offenders are. Because you have children in this church and you do, programs with children, you have the right to demand that sex offender list to keep your people safe from the law enforcement. I used to do this when I was working at the church. I'd get a list all the time. I'd go give it to the director of education, religious ed, all the time. It's something we forget to do, to do things to protect our people. And that's where local action is. And that's one of the reasons that we're in churches, because you need to start to work in your community, this community, to give the tools and to protect the community. Every church in this community, in this country now, needs to start to do that. Because of all these horror stories, all these things, it's going on in this state. It's going on in every state. All this stuff is going on in every state, and it's amping up because they are losing children from the raids or the work that Trump is doing, but they're amping up because each child is a commodity. It means money to them. And everybody is responsible in this country for children. I don't care if they're foreign or they're American. We are responsible for these children because they were brought into this country. We didn't like it, we didn't know about it, but they're in our communities. They're in our communities. So there's also something else I want to talk about, Tara, and we talked about this earlier. There was a judge that was arrested, this Judge Duggan, and you guys all know about this, right? This judge and his wife, and that was in Wisconsin. And let's talk about that as far as what we were talking about, sponsors, that many of these leaders, judges, law enforcement, possibly that they're connected to cartel, bad people because maybe they're compromised or they're making money or something like that. But that's a problem that we must face.
Yeah, and the way that we do that is with radical transparency. We have to see the data and the information that exists. That just makes sense. Some of you may have heard that they are doing some busts, and they've gotten some MS-13 members. They got one in my state of Virginia. And I was listening to all the different reporting that they were doing on this case of this MS-13 member. And one news station said, oh, and there were 5 children in the house. And I'm like, what? We need to know, and the information exists, and your federal dollars fund the Department of Health and Human Services. Your federal dollars fund the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Justice, and the data belongs to the people. So we need radical transparency. Who are the sponsors, which will tell us where the children are. And then after we get this problem solved, which we can do, then we get to start with CPS and foster care and, this cash for kids business. This is unacceptable that there are people. And again, this is why we're coming to churches. Go to americasfuture.net, get involved. We come to churches because we have a heart problem. Right? These people don't know God, and they are doing evil against children, and you can stop it.
Well, also in a church, and this is my experience because I worked in the Catholic Church. I don't know if anybody knows that, but I did, and I discovered some financial problems and ended up testifying in a grand jury against Catholic Charities. And I want you to understand that these predators are always attracted to where kids are. And a lot of times they will hide in churches. And because they're so blatant and they're so bold, and they manipulate people to find their way into the hearts of Christians, faithful people, that we have to understand that that's what we need to work the churches. We need the role of the church to stand up, and we need to be able to identify what's going on around you in this church. And it's really important to understand that. They're bold, and they're very nefarious. They're very deceptive, and that's what you're going to learn. You're going to learn how to identify these people and identify certain behaviors. And it's very important that you show up tomorrow and do this with us, because it's just, you're going to have a chance to really be whole in this church, because you are fighters here. And I'm looking right at your pastor, and you are. You have a bold truth in this church. I was going to say parish, church, and it's very important to stand with your people, and the people stand with you. So I want to. This was very important, and you just brought this to my attention. And Lisa, you can talk about this. 3 illicit massage businesses in here, and we were talking about Wisconsin, and 68 different sites selling escorts, sex escorts in Eau Claire. Could you talk about that as of 5 minutes ago?
So basically, we work on the intelligence side, so we have toolkits that basically go out there and grab all the information in regards to sex ads. We watch chatter and information flowing back and forth. So they asked me to look at your area, and you have illicit massage businesses, you do, and the sex ads themselves, those are going to be on different platforms, different sites. It won't do any good to take them down, because as soon as you take one down, it'll be like a hydrus and 5 more will pop up. That will be every bit as bad, if not worse. On those platforms for sex, it can be anything and everything goes. We do find minors out there. They've gotten really creative on how they hide the minors in these networks now. So they put emojis over their faces. We created a tattoo recognition program that was going out and looking at tattoos, because even youngsters were being tattooed on their arms. So in these rings, through these ads and identifying these networks, you can find the kids a lot of times. They may not be on the frontal part of the advertisement, but they're embedded inside the ring. So you do have rings here. You do have sex ads here, and you do have illicit massage businesses. Now I'm going to ask you a question. What are we going to do about it?
So that's within 5 minutes, you guys. 5 minutes. We just had 68 different sites selling.
Yes.
Multiple escorts.
Jared wanted to say something.
So
I just want to share with you that literally last week, we rode with Lisa and her team, Brandy, and I can tell you that what she is saying is a matter of fact, because she led us to brothels throughout the Dallas, throughout the Dallas area. So her methodology, her intel, it's working. So whenever Mary shares this data with you, I can tell you that I saw it work firsthand literally last week.
Okay, so I'm just going to sum up, and then I'm going to invite one of the most remarkable people you'll meet this evening up to the stage to talk to you. If everything that you heard about here is connected. The ideology that allows for predators in our schools and allows for all of that in the popular culture, in the memes, and in the chat groups, and in Discord, in the gaming rooms, that ideology is the same ideology that is rooted in godlessness and evil over here. It is the same ideology that opens the border and then moves children, knowingly moves children, and puts them in the hands of criminals, people we know are violent criminals, and that uses your tax dollars to do it. And then when they expose that your tax dollars are doing it, they scream and protest. And if you want to know what that ideology looks like, did you hear anybody screaming about what's been happening to these children? No, but how many congressmen have gone to El Salvador, and are screaming about that? So what they're concerned about is the person accused of being a gang member or a cartel member or a terrorist, but nothing about the children. You don't hear anything about it. And so the most important thing for you to take away from this is that you are not powerless. And I'd like to ask Boz to come up on the stage. His organization, Association for Recovery of Children, has done really extraordinary work for so many years. First child he rescued was in Mogadishu in Somalia, when he was with the agency out there in another lifetime. And he has, you have a blueprint, right, Boz? Why are you still sitting down? Come on. Come on. Yes.
I just wanted to say one more thing while he's walking up.
Yep.
You asked what you could do. These books that we're talking about, gender queer, all of these books are gateways to get to these kids, right? It's to desexualize, to sexualize them so that it's common talk for them, and so they don't feel uncomfortable talking about this with these teachers. One of the things that we did at my church, we gave an announcement that we were going to speak at one of the libraries locally to get these books at least shelved appropriately, not ban them, but put them in an 18 and over area. We had over 150 people from my church show up at that little small library board meeting, and they didn't know what hit them. So that's what you can do. Get together and go to these board meetings together. You know, if you don't have kids in the school, show up and just sit in the seats and listen to what's going on, because they act much differently when you're in the boardroom with them.
It's very true. There's so much indoctrination that goes on inside these books and in what we're allowing, and there's no excuse for you, for any of us, to allow that. I've known Boz for many, many years. I've known him, wow, for more than 25 years, I think, or 30 years now. It's a long time. Oh no, not 30, 25, yeah. He and his beautiful wife, Tina, who is often here with us, who isn't here with us tonight, have seen the unimaginable. I mean, really, the things that they have dealt with are just extraordinary. And so you're very lucky to be hearing from this man. I know you're going to be doing some of the training, right, tomorrow? No, you're not going to be here, but ARC does offer training. So if you want to move on from what you learn tomorrow from America's Future, there is an opportunity to do that kind of training with ARC, and I'm just going to hand it over to Boz.
Yeah. Hey, Boz, I'm going to just say something real quick. What was there, Virginia? I can't. Your thing just fell. I just wanted to let you know the girl that Epstein, Guffrey, Virginia, just committed suicide. So this is a reason for people to understand what's going on. This stuff is coming out at so much length, you know, there's so much volume, there's so much going on, that this is a woman, a young girl that, you know, felt this need to do this, to take her life. But it's because everything is coming out so much, and there's so much going on as far as, you know, this list of people. So I just want you to understand that it's because we're trying to, you know, we're trying to help survivors, victims, and overcomers and families understand the intensity of what's going on for that young woman. So I would like to say we should pray for that girl's soul. I'm going to give that to you. Go ahead, Boz. I'm sorry.
So, Mr. President, if you're watching this, if you could turn over the files to America's Future, we can go save some kids, sir. So let me give you a number, and these numbers change. 432,000 American children missing, 300,000 plus UACs missing. Are those numbers big enough to stir your heart? Let me see your hands. Okay, now this next question, I want you to really think about it before you raise your hand, okay? What if it was just one child? Well, we're in the right city then. That's good. When it comes to the children of our world, America's Future could care less who you are. You heard our children will break through any wall, any line, any army to get to you. 1,000 shields, 100 men. It will not stop us. We'll bring fire and fury until there's nothing left standing between us. Our blood is our legacy, our heart beating outside our chest. So understand this. If you mess with our children, you will face a storm that will not stop. There's no warning, no mercy, just a promise you'll regret the day you crossed us. We protect what is ours with everything we are. Because with our children, we will be relentless. We'll be unstoppable. And in the end, you'll see the force of our love is a battle you can never, ever win. Let me ask you this here today. Is that how you feel about this? After 30 plus years in the trenches fighting child sex trafficking, all those who know me can confirm that I don't sugarcoat anything when it comes to this issue. I live by a code of conduct planted from the seeds of God, the Marine Corps, and our founding fathers of this great nation, who I am certain would want every child in America to go unharmed. I'm transparent to a fault and have no hidden agendas, as my friends can confirm. So today, we've pointed out the reality of this issue known as child sex trafficking in America, and why it's important for each of us to get in the fight and do more than just dress up and attend a wonderful gathering to pretend we care. If you do not care about this issue, you're probably at the wrong event. But perhaps, just perhaps, that's too harsh. So I'll ask you to forgive me. Perhaps there are those here who don't really know the issue that well or know why they should care, and that's fair. So allow me to provide you an opportunity to learn more by coming alongside America's future and the members of this team who believe it's a non-negotiable when it comes to the reputation, the welfare, and the future of the great state of Wisconsin. Because this is your state, and if you don't take care of it, then who will? So let me start by defining child sex trafficking. The word is so common these days that most people don't even blink an eye when we mention it. So this is what it really is. It's the 7-year-old girl or boy chained to the floor of a closet with cigarette burns all over their body, hardly fed in days and yet raped 15 times a day by male and female predators, with so many STDs and so much trauma that he or she will be lucky if they reach the age of 12. This is just not trafficking, as many of us have mentioned. These are crimes against children. So let me ask you another question. How do you murder a child without killing them? You sexually exploit them. Now, sitting in this congregation right now, oh, you know what? Thank you, they put it up for me. Sitting in this congregation right now is an entire army of God's chosen people to do this work. If you'll only get involved and realize that God has not given you a spirit of fear. You are a force to be reckoned with. In an age where Satan will flee if you fight. In an age where God's most precious children are at risk. And interesting enough, in an age to which each of you are born. If you wish to be great, commit to something greater than yourself. Whatever it is you intend to be great at, it must have such a priority in your life that you'll stop at nothing to achieve it. It must be more than just a good idea or a nice thing to do. It must be a calling. And you'll know the difference because there will be a gnawing at your soul that will never go away, and that you are about to accomplish something that must be done at all costs, even at the expense of your own comfort, and in extreme cases, your own life. And in that process, I promise you, you will face obstacles. For the untrained mind, that obstacle is a hardship. But for the trained mind, it's simply something to overcome. Now, I believe it's fair to assume that most of you here today are here because you do care about this issue. And most of you realize that awareness, while somewhat effective, is not bringing children home. How many of you remember the picture of the kid on the milk carton? Remember that program? So here's what we did. The missing kid, you put the picture on the carton, and you bought that milk. And every morning, when you poured that on your cereal or in your coffee, you looked at the picture of the missing kid on the milk carton, and you felt that you did something good about it because you looked at the picture on the milk carton. And the next day, you did the same thing, and you felt like you were involved. But at the end of the week, when that carton was empty, where'd it go? It went in the garbage. Did that kid come home? No. The fact is, a child does not come home until there are boots on the ground that physically get their hands on that kid and bring them home to safety. And that's your job. The protection of all Americans is our duty. And the hearing of the reading of this trafficking issue may be useful today, but if men and women rest in hearing and praying, as so many do, it's as if a tree should value itself for being watered and sprouting leaves, and yet never producing any fruit. When did we allow evil to be stronger than us? When did we allow that? For the love of these children and our country and your community, please take your rightful place as citizens who are ready to follow in the footsteps of our founding fathers to take back your communities so that no harm may come to any of your children here in Wisconsin. Stand firm in the face of this evil with a plan of action that shows the world that we fall where we stand. We will not yield, and all that live in the darkness will eventually be destroyed. Do not underestimate the resolve of the American people. So what can each of you in this room do about this issue? How can you send a message to the world that no harm will ever come to a child in Wisconsin? Here's 12 things I'm going to share with you that can get you in this fight. First, pass the death penalty. For anyone who traffics or rapes a child. Now, I don't care if it's a predator outside the family, or a mother or a father or a relative in the family. We handle cases every day where parents sexually exploit their children here in America. They're selling them into trafficking more than you can even imagine. Now, I can hear there's somebody in the audience that are saying, well, maybe, just maybe, the predator was molested and he or she can't help themselves. Please, stop making excuses for crimes against children. There's no place for that liberal bunch of baloney in here. My stepfather was a horrible alcoholic. That isn't an excuse for me to be one. We all have choices in life. You send a strong message to predators, and they'll think twice before they commit this crime. Every pedophile behind bars that I interviewed told me the same thing. If I thought I was going to get the death penalty, I may have not done it. But I'm in for 7, and I'll probably be out for 3 on good behavior or similar responses. Let me be very, very clear on this, so you know exactly who we're dealing with. There is a difference between sinners and the wicked. God provides repentance for sinners, but it's clear that he hates the wicked. And he states that he will destroy the wicked. Child predators are in the wicked category in my book, and guess what? In his too. I believe that when Jesus said, it is better that a millstone be put around a man's neck and him thrown in the ocean and drowned, even though I don't speak Hebrew, but I believe the translation is, he dies. And while you're at it, why don't you guys pass a grooming bill like the state of Florida just did, which penalizes predators for even attempting to recruit a victim. Yeah, like Montana. Second, get trained so you understand the AO, the area of operations. Victimology, what the cartels are doing, how trafficking works, the signs of someone being trafficked, exercising your constitutional rights, intervention, running rescues, operations, the use of tradecraft to stay alive. Learn how to start a non-government organization, all of its liabilities and everything that we actually teach in a 6-day Fight Child Trafficking Equipping course. The course schedule can be found on recoveryofchildren.com, and I believe we put a little leaflet on everybody's seat. There it is right there, thank you. It gives you the dates that we'll be doing that here in the United States. Come join us. This will take you beyond just being aware. It will take you to the point where you can actually go in the field and save the life of a child. Third, begin your own rescue organization or vet existing rescue organizations to see if they're qualified and capable of saving children. And build out that relationship and maintain oversight to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to do. Fourth, vet your local law enforcement to see if they're qualified and capable of saving children. Not everybody is. We run tight operations with law enforcement all across America. Some of them don't even have the budget to put somebody in charge of human trafficking. On average, a police department across America has one person. That's it. They have a lot more people dedicated to homicides, car theft, and the list goes on and on, but not child sex trafficking. Fifth, create a community policing program between yourselves and law enforcement. And if they do not have the bandwidth to do the job, then you need to be prepared to run operations legally yourself. You have the right and the power as American citizens to do this. You need to understand what those rights are. Most police departments, as mentioned, don't receive enough training or proper training to understand the intricacies of child sex trafficking. Most do not have the budget to do what we ask them to do on our own streets of our city. Given the plethora of crimes that they fight daily, they are lucky if they even see their families on a regular basis. And yes, I know they work for us, the citizens, but there has to be some give and take here. So I'm asking you to make an effort to establish a good relationship with your law enforcement partners to see how you can be of help to one another when it comes to child sex trafficking, not only in Wisconsin, but right here in your city. 6, create a call center that operates 24/7, that you can send intelligence to your law enforcement entities who are a part of the community policing program in your community or to an organization that's out there rescuing children. 7, create a safe house system where you or a vetted NGO can take victims as you're lining them up for extended operations or coordinating with a service provider like the Well House run by Carolyn and John Potter in Alabama, or the Safe House Project run by Christy Wells out of Washington, D.C., who certifies and supervises a number of facilities across America for aftercare and long-term rehabilitation. 8, ensure you have a solid relationship with a vetted aftercare provider and that you deep dive into who they are, making sure that they're in line with rescue protocols and do what they claim to do. I cannot tell you how many NGOs in America have been started up and take grant money from the U.S. government and basically put money in their pockets, buy themselves expensive cars, and the list goes on and on and on. They have turned this into a business. Just as the cartel has turned it into a business, they have gone to the dark side here in America, and they have turned it into a business as well. 9th, and this is very important, don't brag. Stay out of the media. Focus on the mission and saving children. Certainly it's okay to show your progress in a year-end report by posting something on social media, but if you post every time you complete a rescue and you tell how you ran that operation, That's a one-trick pony. The bad guys pick up on that, and you'll never be able to do that again. And then they'll use it against you. Please remember this when you get in this fight. This is not about you. This is about them. If you're that type of person and you can put yourself aside, you will do well in the fight. 10th, institutionalize an anti-trafficking training awareness program in your elementary and your high schools. I cannot tell you how many high schools we've tried to get into and speak about this issue, and they shut the door on us. Why do you think that is? What's up with that? If that happens to you here in your city, you need to question it. You need to find out why they don't want to protect the children of the school. 11, we have learned that keeping people engaged relates to how they define success and how they achieve a sense that they can make a difference. Approach this issue defining success as one life at a time. The impact of direct action that diverts even one person from being trafficked tends to be the deep-seated motivator for most communities. After 33 years of doing this, I would love to walk into a warehouse and save 50 kids. It doesn't work that way. Sometimes it's just one kid, then another kid, then two kids, whatever it may be. And if you think we're going to stop child sex trafficking in America, you haven't been in the trenches long enough. We are not. But on our watch, we can do our best. Because if you think you're going to stop it in America, you're going to get frustrated really fast and you'll give up in the fight, okay? Just as it's one child at a time, it's one battle at a time. And finally, number 12. If you're not getting the results you did not work for, then do not complain. Hold your community representatives accountable for the work they have agreed to do in saving children in the state of Wisconsin. And if they fail to do that, then get them out of office. That's your job. You put them there, you get them out if they're not doing their job. This isn't DEI. This is merit. If they can't do the job, then don't leave them in there. Remember this. Most everyone in local, state, and federal government, they work for you, the taxpayer. Don't let them forget that. If you want to save our children in America, then you're going to have to pull the veil off of corruption, greed, and apathy, because it's all over the nation. And if you're a representative in local, state, and federal government here tonight, please listen to this. The greatest leaders are the greatest servants. My job in the military was not just to lead my troops into battle, but it was to make sure that they came home alive, to make sure I served them and their needs. You take care of your troops, and your troops will take care of you. On the legislative front, we're working on a bill called the Congressional Accountability Bill. And it goes like this. If your children are raped by an illegal alien in this country, you can bring criminal charges against them. But you can also work to bring in criminal charges against any member of Congress that voted for the open border policy. They are complicit in the crime. For too long in America have we had people on the Hill making decisions and policy for us, and we take the brunt end of the repercussions, okay? And because they're going to be out of office maybe in 2 years or 3 years, they must be held accountable for the decisions that they make that affect the American people. They must learn that they have to think twice before they just spout something off. We'll let you know if it gets through.
Thank you, boss. Are you done?
Nope, not yet.
Okay.
Mary gave me 4 more minutes.
But who's counting?
Thanks, Mary. I appreciate it. So if you're a person of conscience, it's possible that the size and weight of this entire issue tonight could overwhelm your emotions and discourage you from ever getting in the fight. But let me assure you that there's hope, and it's found in every step you take to acquire the knowledge and the skill set to win the battle to save the children. It's never about walking the right path, but are you walking the path the right way? So join us tomorrow for some of the training that will teach you to do exactly that in a way that's confident and courageous. The greatest battles are not fought against the world, but they are fought against ourselves. And if that be the case, then we're far greater than most other humans, because it is our integrity that forces us to look inward rather than casting blame on the world that surrounds us. Now, I know there's some of you out there, right now I'm looking out there and they say, well, I think I'm too old to get in this fight. Do not regret getting older. It is a privilege denied to many. Complement the wisdom you have with what we have to offer. We do not rise to the levels of our expectations. We fall to the level of our training. Keep in mind, there's a balance even with training. People will never care about how much you know until they see how much you care. With that said, the training you acquire tomorrow, and if you join us on the 6-day training course, is one step closer to being prepared, showing the world that you care and being the hero these kids need. I like to think of it as Mr. Potato training. For most of you here today, you're the same person every single day. You intervene. You take action. You do the same thing 1,000 times, and then one day, you do that same thing and it gets broadcast to the world as an act of heroism. Many other people want to be a hero, and they're looking for 15 minutes of fame. But they're couch potatoes. So when the opportunity comes, they're unprepared, or they don't even respond. They're not heroes. And yes, learning something new will be a process for you. But if you want to keep the results, fall in love with that process. And in doing so, you might surprise yourself when you save a child. Saving one child will not change the world. But for that one child, their entire world will change. Please remember this, it's very important. On one man or one woman with courage, there's always a majority. Do you think the Flynns have a giant family? They have a big family, but it's not a giant family. One man or one woman with courage is a majority. Don't expect the federal government to take care of this problem. They have their hands full with not only running government, but cleaning up all the corruption from the last administration. The problem is in your community and the communities around America. It's not sitting on the doorsteps of the White House. It's sitting in your backyard. And it's your job to cut your own grass. If you get disappointed by the results you get from not working hard enough, as I said earlier, don't complain about it. May I remind all of us once again, it is we the people. It is not we the government. Each of you has earned the right to decide the fate of our nation because you are the fate of our nation. Every child trafficked is waiting to be saved. If we do not, who will? Unashamedly, you have to become their voice. You're their shield. You lead by examples, always remembering who you are. If you do this, you will create a life that feels good on the inside, not just something that looks great on the outside. Get in the fight. Thank you, and may God continue His blessings on you and our great country, the United States of America.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for being here. Mary, do you want to close out? Hope to see lots of you tomorrow. And you'll see the wonderful movie Into the Light with Mike Smith, and you'll learn more from all the people here.
You guys can go chase yourself if you want. Thank you very much. Thank you. I want to thank these guys. They're like my kids. They're just unbelievable. Kara, Laura, they're all around here tomorrow, all day. Tomorrow will be a very, take a stretch. Stand up and stretch. I know. Take a deep breath. Loosen up, shake it off. It's pretty harsh, you know. Some of this stuff is very difficult, but it's reality. And what I want to do is I just want to say something that is very important with our message when we're going across the country. And God has put this on my heart a lot. I mean, I literally I feel I carry a mantle that my own mother carried, and that was a love for babies and fighting against abortion back in the day when it was just begun with the feminist movement. And she always said to me that movement was going to be the downfall of this country. And so just think about that, you know, when you're tonight and so forth. Tomorrow is going to be a lot more call to action, a lot more teaching, a lot more training, a lot more talk, and a lot more interaction with you guys. Because I know you're all curious. I can see your faces. You've got a lot of questions, a lot of things you need to know. And somebody yelled out, "What do we do?" Well, we'll give you some call to action tomorrow. It's a really, really incredible time. There'll be a lot of miracles tomorrow, too. One of the things that I wanted, getting back to what I was saying, is we must bring God back into this nation. That's the first thing that we have to do as a country, because they've been taking God out of this country. And I say they, evil. I say the evil. So we must rely heavily on what the activity is in the churches. And in your church, make this the most important part of your life. That's what my advice to you is to make your church the most important part of your life, the most important community in your life, okay, with your pastor. And that's one thing, okay, because that role of the church is so important. And I also recommend this book, my brother and Boone Cutler, who's not with us today, but this role of the church. There's a whole book series on that stuff, the 5G and the AI. So I'm going to just bring the pastor back up here, and I want to just have a closing prayer and, you know, pray for everybody. And I also want to thank that tonight, I want to thank all the viewers out there. There were 16,000, 17,000 viewers tonight. So, and that's a miracle. And that is very, very big for your area and for Wisconsin, because this is something that we're sharing together as a country, all this important kind of information. And it is just so important that you do all those call to actions. Boz talks about all this. It can be done right here in this NGO. But it's not an NGO, it's a church. We can do it right here in the church. You can do all those things in this church. And you can see how far you will extend your lives to helping the future of our country, of our nation, of our world is the children. They're the builders of the future. So, Pastor.
I just want to share, there's other pastors here in the area. So, and I know a lot of people here, you go to a church somewhere else, so encourage your pastor, give them this information to be a light in their community. Even for this event, there's been a lot of comments we've had to delete with social media ads trying to get the word out. And my thought would be, who would come against an event like this? Exactly. And our Facebook page in general, we delete comments all the time. We've had somebody in Madison try to legally come against our church for taking a stand, not just against, you know, child exploitation, but just being a light in politics and period, you know, in general. You know, it's like, but God's raising up a church right now in Wisconsin, around the world, in America, that's going to say, hey, we're not ashamed to be the light and push back darkness. And I just want to say thank you for allowing us to host this event, and for the, you know, the
you guys, God's using you in this nonprofit in a powerful way. And so let's pray. God, we just thank you for tonight. And we thank you, Lord, this isn't the finish line, it's just the start line. We have a lot of work to do. But Lord, we know you've got a plan. And give us eyes to see, and give us the game plan. And we're going to learn a lot tomorrow. But I pray a special blessing over all the speakers and every person here for safe travels back tonight and again tomorrow in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.
Okay, well, we'll end it, and I just wish you all a blessed night, and take a deep breath, and there is a, can we just do one thing? Can I have that list? I need to bring some people up here, really quickly. Do I have that list? Do I have that list? Yeah. Is it written down? Oh, here we go. I need to honor some people here. Okay. Robert Johnson, 6 years active, 15 years as a guard, served in Operation Desert Storm. Whoa, there we go. God bless you. God bless you. Okay, Brian Gorley, did I say that right? 8 years, Army National Guard, served in Iraq during Operation Iraq Freedom. Your associated pastor. God bless you. Bob Kurchik. Am I saying that right? Kurchik. 6 years active, 14 years guard, served in Operation Iraq Freedom. And Danny Pope, 4 years active Army, served in Iraq and Afghanistan. Danny, thank you. These are the brave of the bravest of the brave. Aaron Farmer Mason, 4 years, active Army, infantry. Ooh, served in Afghanistan. Thank you, sir. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Mike Miziak, 24 years, U.S. Navy active, served in Guantanamo Bay. God bless you. I've got one here. I've got one here. I got another one. There you go. You're welcome. God bless you. So, this is quite a community. You have a wonderful community of heroes, and I'm gonna let my brother kind of say.
Okay, I'll just wrap it up for the night, but I just want to say, thank you very much for opening up your family's home here, right? Your congregation's home. To open this up for this particular church is not an easy decision to make. And we're not here because there's a problem here. We're here because there's light here. Okay? And so what we want to do is we want to take the light that is, presented through this leader and through this congregation, and we want to shine that throughout your entire community. And, if we can work things out with, we're already having conversations about, getting some legislation going. We're an educational organization. Doesn't make any difference whether you get involved with us or not. The point is to get involved. Do something. People come up to me all the time, and they thank me for my service, just like we just said. Thank you to those gentlemen that came up here for their service. And not everybody has it in them to serve in the military. So it's like, that's what's a wonderful thing. It's humbling when people tell you, thank you for your service. People serve in so many other ways, and that's what you have to find in yourself. How do you want to serve your community? How do you want to serve your church? How do you want to serve your family? How do you want to serve this country? And that's what it's all about at the end of the day. If we don't do this, sort of stitching this fabric of the beautiful quilt of the United States of America together, we won't get another 250 years, okay? And I know that we can do that. I know that we can do that. So God bless you all. God bless America, and thank you very much.
We'll see you tomorrow. Big day. Be ready. Get some sleep.